All right. So, Peter Kang, welcome to the Veza Talks podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm actually honored to have someone of your caliber and what you've built on the Veza Talks podcast in this new season that we're launching very shortly. You're one of our first guests. And today, I really want to get to know who Peter Kang is. How did you get started in the industry? And how did you grow so many agencies at the exact same time? Why don't we start with your walking? I know you get a lot of good ideas from walking. I feel like it's a source of inspiration for you. Meditation, maybe. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I actually moved up to the Hudson Valley over a year ago. So I lived in Brooklyn, New York City for about 17 years. And then, once we found out we were having a third child, we decided to move outside the city. And yeah, where we live, it's very naturey. It's got a lot of farms, and yeah, I decided to make a habit out of going for a walk every morning before work. So after I drop off my kids at school, I'll come back and then I just go walk down my block, which is pretty long and very hilly. So it's a nice time to like get exercise and fresh air because I know most days it's being on my butt in front of the computer on a Zoom call or something like that. And so, I try to get my, at least 30 minutes of walking in. And yeah, during that time, it's great way to get a lot of ideas, flowing. And, sometimes I'll record a LinkedIn video post, which I'm sure that's where you've seen me walking. But most days it's just, I try to, not listen to anything, just kind of keep my head and screen away from myself, and then just try to think about, all right, like what are my priorities, or what are some ideas that are going that I need to go a little bit deeper into. So yeah, it's a great way to get that going. And sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's perfect. So yeah, I just try to enjoy the elements and just really savor the walk.
Yeah, you're right about that. It definitely refreshes you when you walk. You give yourself something to do and a way to process all of your thoughts that are probably going through your head. Do you have like a distance? You just go up and down the street, number of steps?
Yeah, I mean, it ends up, so it's a pretty steep climb back down and then back up, and depending on the day and like when my first meeting is, sometimes if it's if I have a little bit of more slack, I'll go maybe like a mile plus, of a walk, and then when I have a little bit less time, it'll be yeah, a bit shorter. So yeah, it just depends, and it takes a while. I'm walking at a slow pace especially when I come back uphill. And by the time I finish, I'm usually like sweating. It's that steep.
It's that steep?
Yeah, pretty steep. Like
Wow.
I honestly, like I've tried to ride my bike on it as well. I'll do some road biking every once in a while, and like the first few times, I couldn't make it uphill. I had to hop off and walk up the hill. That's how steep it was for me. And but I finally got to a point where I could ride all the way. But yeah, it's not easy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I mean, hey, it's definitely not the hardest thing for you considering your history and your career and what you've done in the agency space. Now you sit as the CEO of Barrow Holdings, which owns and operates several different agencies in different verticals, all with different capabilities. I'm sure they benefit all each other some way where you hand clients and projects crossing different companies. That's really interesting. So before Barrow Holdings and all these different agencies that you have, you started obviously with one, with just Barrow, which was the Shopify Plus partner. You built e-commerce websites for clients. How did you get started in that? How did you scale that idea? What were some of the challenges that you've encountered in that agency, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So Barrel, we started, much earlier than our Shopify days. So 2006, my co-founder and I started the business, and at the start, it was basically like branding, graphic design, web design development shop. Willing to take any and all clients, and these were nonprofits, small businesses, artists. Whatever would whoever was willing to pay for some kind of work. And so we really just struggle busted through the first several years. Got lucky with some clients where some startups started getting bigger. They started throwing us more work, and yeah, we learned to do different things. Whether it was digital marketing or email. more sophisticated websites. And so we built a broad skill set of just being able to take design, marry it with technology, and just kind of launch these experiences online. And yeah, I think during this run, we did a lot of sites on WordPress. We did some Drupal stuff. We made custom web apps. But right around let's say 2013, 14, we started getting more e-com work, and this was kind of this especially being located in New York City. There were a lot of you know already existing brands or new brands coming to the scene that were looking to leverage e-commerce, and Shopify was starting to gain momentum. So we got into it pretty early. We had familiarity with Shopify from previous projects, and we decided to really embrace Shopify as a platform that we could use to grow our agency as well. So yeah, we ended up becoming Shopify Plus partners. Started doing some really cool Shopify builds for different brands, and yeah, it started to carve our reputation as a Shopify agency. And so yeah, it took a lot of kind of I guess it took some discipline to be like, okay, we're going to go this route now. We're going to stop doing, the web apps that we have been familiar with, or we're going to stop doing, these content, focused sites, and instead be all in on ecom. But I think it's paid off, and it's helped us in many ways. And we're not done evolving. Obviously, like we did a lot on the Shopify front, but even then, like the last I say few years, just there's a proliferation of people doing the same thing, which is building Shopify websites. And so we've had to go even deeper within that. And we recently rolled out some new positioning on our website around like being very CPG commerce focused. And so that's not just Shopify, but it's specific to CPG, which is a lot of food and bev, personal care type of brands, and helping them leverage Shopify, but then doing other forms of marketing for them as well.
Yeah, obviously your early stages sounded like they were a little bit difficult. Was there any point of smooth sailing, or was it generally always stressful to grow?
I mean, there's different types of stress, of course, and
Yeah.
moments of excitement, but then it's just different types of problems that come up with every new like unlock or new level achieved, I guess. So I say there was a point. Okay, so I distinctly remember like when we moved from like a really dark and dingy like co-working space. It was like you know literally like no window, right? So it was
Okay.
working in like a really depressing space, and then we moved to like an office that like had beautiful light. It was a small office, but it was our own space, and I thought, oh
Hmm.
man, we made it. And this was like when we were, maybe 4 or 5 people, and I was like, wow, like I could see us just doing this for the rest of my career or whatever. Like it's crazy. Like just it was just I thought we made it, but then of course the next few months, like we ended up quadrupling the team because like we just won a bunch of business, and some things went right. We outgrew that office and had to move to somewhere else, and then different challenges came up, like we had to manage a bunch of people for the first time. We had to kind of put in more processes, and that those were different set of headaches and unexpected issues that popped up that we just were kind of ill equipped at the time, but we're learning experiences, and we learn from that too. So yeah, nothing was smooth sailing. And then yeah, and then you experience all this growth, and you think revenue is going to keep increasing forever, and then you start to have instances where you might lose clients because you don't handle certain projects well, and then you
Hmm.
lose some deals because it's getting more competitive in certain areas. And then you go, oh wow, like we're not gonna grow this year. Like that's another set of problems that come, and you're like, wow, like we have to be more mindful of costs or something. So these are all things that we'd had to deal with over the years. But I think I think these were very formative. And if I look back, I'm like, wow, it sucked that we went through these, and some of the decisions that we made at the time were really poor. But we learned from them, and at least moving forward, and with our companies now under the holding company, we can advise them to avoid a lot of the mistakes that we made.
Yeah, that's very wise, very well said, and yeah, definitely from a set of experiences usually come from a set of unexpected problems, and that's where the real wisdom is like looking back and seeing exactly what was that decision that you made that impacted you negatively, and then the bad thing is though, like sometimes a bad decision has a rippling effect. Not only do you lose clients, you lose employees, you lose different partners that were co-servicing this with you as well, and then there's your reputation. So I've been there. I've experienced that stuff as well, and losing clients is never easy. And the way I framed it to my team was, guys, if we end up losing clients because of a broken process, we have to sure as hell be confident ourselves that we're going to come back from this 3x better than what we were before, because this problem costed us not just money coming in every single month, but a relationship, an introduction to a potential client, and really just the consistency of working with one client over a long duration, which is what every agency aspires to have, right? And so I think yeah, in this space it's very challenging with the different set of problems. Like you said, there's good stress, there's bad stress, and like I'm sure we've all had situations where payrolls a couple days out, but your bank accounts are a couple weeks out from where they're supposed to be. And yeah, it's definitely all a part of the journey.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that we tell ourselves is, and this became like a core value of ours at Barrel, was like turning setbacks into opportunities. Like just telling
Yeah,
ourselves continually, like, okay, and also just putting ourselves in the mindset, like, hey, look, this is a business where you're gonna like setbacks and kind of being blindsided by different things. Like that's part of the job. Like it's like
for sure.
expect to be confronted with setbacks and challenges, because otherwise you're probably not you know um, being effective with what you're trying to do. So that's where we really you know uh, went from being reactive to being like, what, like bad things are going to happen, but let's just have the right mindset to deal with those as they come.
Love that. Love that. And is that a part of the culture now across the board with all the different companies you guys operate?
Yeah, and I think culture is essentially like an output of how we model behavior and how we just make sure the type of like incentives and other kinds of structures are put in place. So by that I mean, like, first it starts with like how myself and my co-founder Sewuk interact with each of the CEOs of the agencies.
Hmm.
Because if we go, look, like, if we hear about like a setback and we came down on our CEO and be like, oh my god, like why aren't you fixing this, or why aren't you, like, if we bring the stress and the the panic and the reactiveness to that situation, like we're not
Hmm.
modeling well. So it's
Right.
like, and that's going to lead to our CEOs being stressed and they're going to take it out on their team and all that. So we really believe that it starts with us being like, okay, something bad happened, like let's talk about it, and then let's just figure out how we're going to deal with it, and what do we learn from it, and then just move on. Like problems are, like I said, problems are expected. It's a mindset. And so we believe, like, really strongly that it's about modeling that and just be doing our part first, and that's what's going to create that culture across the board.
Got you. And so, all right, so you started the agency, Barrel. You guys dabbled in everything from advertising, building web application, WordPress, Drupal, all kinds of CMSs, and then finally you honed in on Shopify and focusing on Shopify e-commerce stores, and now having a focus on CPG. How does that? So you basically niched it down. That model is ironclad from the looks of it. You now operate several different agencies. How does that? What does that look like? How are you approaching the agency space now? Because you have one, and you have yeah, the Shopify, you have the Webflow space, you have design, you have more on the way, I'm sure. How did you integrate this sort of culture from the origin, which is Barrel, to all the different agencies, and what's that model of operation that you have with the different agencies?
Yeah. As with many things, some of it was, organic, in that there was not a real intentional design behind it, but something's developed. And then, as we got more into it, it became more, an opportunity for us to be like, all right, like maybe there's more intentionality we could put behind it, more of a design we could put behind it. So, just to backtrack, like, Barrel, right around like 15 years into the business, and we had been, fully into that e-commerce journey of like becoming a Shopify focused firm. One of the things that we saw was, okay, we have all these clients that we've serviced with WordPress, and then there were also even Shopify clients that no longer fit kind of the focus that we wanted to go, like a bit more scaled up clients, and so
Yeah.
we took those, that roster of clients, and then we decided to spin it out as its own agency. And because a lot of that, most of those contracts were support and maintenance type of clients. It's very
Hmm.
like, low number of hours, but we thought these were sticky clients that have been staying with us for 3, 4, 5, even 6 years, and so we one of our employees decided to like volunteer to run it, and so we made him a part owner in this new enterprise, and then launched it, and this was the beginnings of Vaulted Oak, and yeah, that kind of opened our eyes. We were like, wow, you can do something like this where you could have a different entity, and incentivize somebody to run it. And the
Hmm.
beautiful thing was, like, he hit the ground running. He had full operational control. Basically, I was like a shareholder in that business, but and obviously providing them with leads and other kind of support as needed, but on a day to day basis. Jason, who took that business on, just ran it, and ran it really well. Like, he's been able to triple the revs from where it started, and just like that gave us kind of an aha moment of like, huh, this, like, it's possible to start another business, put someone in charge, and like, support them in a way and incentivize them, and then we can watch it grow. And so, like, that's where BX Studio, the Webflow side of things came about, because Barrel had been an early adopter of Webflow just by accident. Like, some of our designers were using it. We use it for our own website, and then Webflow was giving us leads, whether it was through the enterprise partnership or through the the directory. And like, I was like, I don't want Barrel to do this, because we're Shopify. Like, we need to be focused. And so we thought, hey, like, maybe we could just spin out and start a Webflow agency. And so this is where we ended up hiring our CEO Jacob, and put him in place. Set the incentives once again, gave him a lot of upside, and we're like, hey, look, we'll seed it with some deal flow from Barrel. The rest of it, like, go run it, be entrepreneurial, and Jacob's be able to grow that into a really impressive business as well. So yeah, that like, before we knew it, we like, okay, we have 3 agencies, and like, this is fun. Like, can we do more? And so we ended up
Hmm.
sketching out an idea for a brand design studio. That's where Bolster came about. And then we also recently launched an Amazon agency, Prima Mode. And then earlier this year, we ended up acquiring an agency in the like design, like product design space, UX UI for startups, called Catalog. And yeah, like, while this was all happening, like, I realized, oh, okay, like, my time and attention is being split, with holding company duties, and then I still was CEO of Barrel. So decided to kind of put in a plan to get myself and my co-founder out of the day to day of Barrel, so we could just focus on the holding company. And that's what we executed on earlier this year, where Lucas, who had been a long time employee and then partner at Barrel, he became the CEO of Barrel, and I was able to take a step out and really focus on the holding company.
Great. That transition sounds like, well, here's the thing. When you were CEO up until recently at Barrel, that transition going from CEO of an agency and CEO of a holding company that owns and operates multiple agencies sounds like there was a big time constraint as well. Like, you had to just reprioritize who you give your attention to, who you have to set KPIs and goals for, and then how the whole systems are running. How do you manage all that? And how did you get yourself from, like, how were you able to let go of the reins of the main agency Barrel to focus on the holding company?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start with that last question. It's it starts with, obviously, the having the trust, and it wasn't an overnight decision. Like,
I can imagine.
Lucas said, we had talked about this like 2 years prior, so that we were like, okay, like, we know by 2024, like mid year, like, this is going to happen. So let's build up to that, and what are all the gaps we need to fill, the processes, all the things that we need to do to get there. But like, always knew like he's super capable, just like an amazing communicator, amazing like mind, just strategic thinker. So like I was like, okay, like this is gonna be fine. It's just kind of doing it, and then it's having the discipline thereafter of like not trying to meddle. And I think that's probably the most challenging is like, okay, like this agency that I've run for 18 years, like how do you kind of take the step back and things play out, and let Lucas make all the decisions that he needs to.
I'm
Yeah,
sure I'm sure there's an element of instinct as well. And when you just know someone can do it, like you can have all the validation points from someone, all the conversations, but there's always that part of you that just knows this person's going to absolutely crush it. Did you have that as well as you're evaluating?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, no doubt there with Lucas, and that's been great. So yeah, so along with that, like we did have a model already with BX and Vaulted Oak, because we're pretty hands off. Like we don't, at the holding company level, we do talk about what are the goals for the year going to be in terms of revenue and profit. We talk about, and we have a discussion on like, hey, what is a reasonable and achievable growth rate, and how are we going to get there? So we have those discussions, and then we also break that into like, what do we think the pace of each quarter needs to be, and we'll talk about that as well. And every quarter we revisit that and make sure we're on track or exceeding it, or if not, like how are we going to reforecast? So that's kind of the extent. But beyond that, we go, look, you guys are smart, you guys are capable, go run it. And then every week we'll check in, and we'll be a sounding board, and we might suggest things that, from our experience, how we might think about things, or hey, like we might be able to connect them with other resources, or be like, hey, talk to this other agency in our portfolio that's handled this problem in this way. And so there's a lot of like that knowledge share, cross pollination, that kind of like just being a coach in many respects. But then we don't like, a lot of times, our CEOs will just do what they want to do, and learn from it, learn from their own mistakes, and then other times they'll heed our advice, and it might work out, it might not. So yeah, it's always like, but we're like, in some ways, like we could go probably a month without talking and they'll be fine, maybe a quarter without talking and they should be fine.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we like that decentralized kind of way, because yeah, as we get more agencies, and just kind of focus shifts more to the M&A side of things, like I think, yeah, like we're not gonna be in a place to even spend too much time with our agencies, respectively.
Right, right. How do you manage your time now with all the different agencies and the CEOs? I'd imagine in the beginning it was a little bit sporadic, but I'd love to learn about like how do you systemize the communications between all the CEOs and everything you guys got going on.
Yeah, we try to be light touch, because like we don't want to be like there. I always feel like everyone's already busy, like just running their
Right.
agencies. So like we always go, okay, like we don't want to be the element that like they're already like I always like the kind of visual of like there it's a cup that's like the water's pretty full. I don't want to like add
Hmm.
more water and make them overflow, like that overwhelming feeling. So try to be light touch about it. We have like a so I meet weekly with the CEOs, and a lot of those convos are around like strategy, new business, just talent. Like those are kind of the topics that I care about, and focus on, and try to add value. And then my co-founder Sewik also meets with them just to talk more specific about finance, and like the kind of making sure, hey, like pipeline's looking healthy, like our cash flow situation is good, so it's the receivables are good, all those things. And those are like 30-minute meetings, so we 30-minute, some may run an hour, but like we try to keep them pretty light. And then we have our Slack, where all the leaders are. There might be some information and knowledge share going on there. But then the bigger thing is once a quarter we all meet together, and you know many of them can make it in person to New York City, and so like we'll get together, and you know we actually we used to just focus on like performance of each of the agencies and sharing like what's working, what's not, everyone taking turns. So this past one, we made an all day one for the first time, and just also included a couple more in depth knowledge sharing sessions. So that's been kind of the extent of the system. And I think it's worked pretty well, and like people have learned from each other, and then like if they need to go deeper with each other, they could take it offline and kind of connect with each other and get value there.
Right, right. So I have some advice to ask you for. Veza Digital today, where actually this month we had an incredible month in terms of new business opportunities and leads that came in through our website and different referrals and also from Webflow. However, we noticed that our sales cycles now are actually almost 25% longer than this time last year. We're also noticing that we're not the only agency they're talking to. It's usually like three or four other agencies. And I think that's why the timeline's getting stretched out. So my question to you is what advice would you have for me and my sales team to increase our probabilities for closing more deal flow in a shorter time frame? And then my second question is, are you seeing the same thing at your Webflow agency, BX Studios?
Yeah, I mean, I think not so much on the BX side. From what I gather, it's been like uh, there, just it's been a mix. Like, of course, there's some that are stretched out long, but then there's some that close pretty quickly. So it's a
Yeah.
mix. I say I've seen a lot on the barrel side with our Shopify related work. We've had clients taking 10 months, 16 months to close. No joke. Like, there's still stuff that we've been that we started working in late 23 that we're about to
Hmm.
sign now. So it's like stuff like that. But yeah, like I always think about, I mean, as as you get data and as you kind of figure out, hey, like they're like, yeah, like you said, 25% longer or whatever the sales cycle stretches to, you have this kind of data that you can use to model out the future. So you might be like, okay, you know what, we know that if we have X number of leads come in and the likelihood of close is X number of weeks or months, like model that in and be conservative, right? And that way, now like, okay, we need more. We probably need, if we want to hit certain targets, we probably need more leads to kind of go along to kind of fill those time gaps and work it that way. And there, like you can segment it in different ways too, and you'll get different numbers because there's like there's types of leads, let's say, coming like super cold, like they saw you on the directory, Webflow directory, and then reach out, or on search and reach out. That could be a different closing, like sales cycle, a
Hmm.
duration versus, somebody like an existing client refers somebody, and it's like that could be much higher quality, for example, or like even an existing client with a new opportunity, let's say they have
Right.
another company or like another department that they want you to do work for, that's a much shorter sales cycle as well, right? So you can start to model those things out and then be like, okay, cool. Like not all these things are created equal. Like as long as we can focus on these opportunities that have a likelihood to close sooner, then we can fill the gaps, and then we still have these seeds that we've planted for sales cycles that are taking longer to close, and then like the win rates too, like is there a trend on like how we're winning these deals, because a lot of that could be driven by, okay, like who are we competing against, sometimes clients will tell you, sometimes they won't, and then also like price point,
By the
like
way,
that's what we
do you ask the lead, hey, are you talking to other agencies? Yeah, we are. Do you mind telling
yeah
me who? And yeah,
yeah
okay,
yeah sometimes they'll yeah, and sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they'll be like, none of your business, but whatever, right?
right,
Doesn't hurt to
right.
ask. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So data, use former data to model out what the future would look like. That's actually, I mean, we've done some of that, and we try to incorporate that in our HubSpot CRM with our pipeline overview and just seeing time to close. And we have a weighted time average on what the average deal size is, and we compare it quarter over quarter and year over year, and we see how the data's been evolving. We also notice on when we were doing our online analysis of the number of Webflow agencies, this time last year, there was half as many agencies than there are today. So in the last year, Webflow turned up the plug and turned up the thermometer, or whatever they did, to get more agencies onto the expert program. And look, many of these are startups, like freelancers who got together and they're creating their agencies. So there's a lot of that happening. However, there are some there are some really good agencies that came up out of nowhere. And they had another agency before. So similar to what you did with Barrel, going from Webflow to different CMSs, we've seen now, and I'm sure you have as well, different agencies who've been around for the last 20 years who just added a Webflow capability. So there's a lot of that going on. I think that we're dealing with that in the market. We're also dealing with the freelancers and the contractors. Some agencies, unfortunately, are racing to the bottom in terms of pricing. And I mean, that doesn't affect us because we know our standard, we know what we deliver, we know how we deliver it. We know that we're really good at the project management because we're integrating different types of AI modelings to help us with PM. By the way, have you heard of Lindy.ai?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, we this thing
Yeah.
is like when we first discovered it. At first, we're like, nah, it's automation basically. It's like a glorified Zapier. But then when you start using it and when you start seeing how many hours you save from like manual tasks, the whole Pareto principle of 80/20 really applies when you start using
Our killer
Lindy.
use case of that of Lindy. What's been the killer use case for you guys? Like, what's kind of unlocked value?
Yeah, well, a couple things. So in sales, for example, whenever a new lead comes in from our website, we set up a trigger from our HubSpot to enrich the data and give us a full recap on them. So if it's a B2B SaaS startup, where they located, when they get their last funding round, which investors invested into them, what's a summary of their business, when did that person who reached out to us start at the role? Because normally we know our ICP. When they're brand new into the role, 6 months into it, their first initiative is usually a new website. So we know what sales process to run and what kind of information to pull. So that's been a really essential one that saved us research time. That's one when it comes to our project management and our account management. To be able to tap into a knowledge base for when a customer has a question about a certain project and when something can start, having that information available readily is definitely beneficial. And there's a couple other ones we use as well, mostly to the day to day, lower end of the work, the administrative stuff, the stuff you can either give to a VA or an automation to do. That's what we've enabled AI for. But yeah, it's been interesting. Curious to see how you guys used it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's yeah. Like I think we've been playing around with it, but like just yeah, it's not like a regularly used thing because I do think we're using like Claude and ChatGPT for a lot of these
Yeah.
kind of processes as well. So yeah, there's always opportunity and like the enrichment stuff for sure. It's like yeah, and at the end it's like you know I'm and maybe I'm like a little bit more of a skeptic on like AI workflow automation stuff, just because I'm like, well, does it actually like it saves time, but does it like help you win? And I'm like, and that I'm always a little bit more like, okay, it still boils down to like, hey, like a lot of clients' decisions when they're looking at you know different agencies is like, hey, like who referred who? That's a huge factor, right? And also like what is ultimately the price? It's like those two
Hmm.
things, and then maybe the other layer would be like, all right, did they work with a client that like I think we're very close to being similar to, or like so that gives me confidence that they could do the same job for me.
Right.
So and I'm like, a lot of stuff is already one. And I'm like, okay, does the extra research, that AI enables make the difference in winning or losing? Then maybe it doesn't hurt, but yeah, but
Hmm.
I'm also like, well, like, is it, yeah, like you've probably already, kind of tipped your chances with a lot of these other activities. So yeah, you talk about Pareto principle. I'm like, yeah, like the 80/20 of this is like, yeah, the 20% is actually the stuff, that they're going to factor on, which is like I said, price, your relevant experience, and then who referred you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. We've had a lot of conversations recently. Recently, I say recently, I mean like this quarter and like a little bit of September around price. We put our pricing on our website. We say our packages start from 5,000 and change, and then we have our one-time projects that start from 12 to go up to 35 plus. And then we're in these sales conversations, and price comes up. Hey, why do you guys cost this much? And then we explain to them, we cost this much because we know your type. You're a B2B SaaS company. You got your Series A. You have two in-house marketing people around content and social media. you have no web capabilities right now. We're the guys that are gonna consolidate your time to market with our expertise because we've systematically done this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We know these migrations. We know what has to happen. We know that if we do it for you, we'll do it in 12 weeks as opposed to you doing it for 12 months. And there's things that can mess up, break. There's a whole process to it. And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. But then you look at their work experience, and they're a second time CMO or second time or first time director of marketing. So the cost conversation is new to them on why an agency services cost sometimes $180,000 for the year. Like what's really included in this whole package, and so those conversations are always interesting to have. Curious, how do you guys deal with that when price is of question?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, pricing we could talk forever, honestly,
I
because
know.
yeah, there's a few different angles to it. You know, independent like this, every buyer kind of comes with their own perceptions of what something should cost as well. So there's consideration of that,
Hmm.
and then there's the job of obviously the agency to educate and kind of try to anchor them to a price that you want to charge and demonstrate
Yeah.
why that makes sense. And then yeah, ultimately it's do they buy it or not, and do they think the value is there. But also like you want to be competitive and while preserving margin to take a profit. And so like I say, part of some in some respects, like we, and it's interesting you publish price and like, yeah, I think we publish certain types of pricing, not all of them. Cause like, yeah, we do think there's opportunities to like capture value in different ways. And also, like certain clients just need to be charged more just cause like, they're going to demand a lot more,
Hmm.
kind of a white glove service in terms of account management, project management and just oversight from, let's say,
Yeah. Attention.
yeah. So like that has to be factored in somehow. And so like yeah, I think pricing is a combination of art and science, and like it's about yeah, it's about kind of like I mean I love it because it's like there's a psychological aspect of like okay like try to fully understand the client, but then help them understand you, and then arrive at some kind of a number that is win-win for both sides, and then ultimately like what are all the things that you can do on your end to give yourself a chance to charge more. And a lot, like I said, it goes back to the winning factors that I talked about. But
Yeah.
like if you establish a great brand for your agency and everyone's like oh yeah like you know like BX is the place to go if you want to if you want this kind of very complex project, migration to Webflow off of WordPress, let's say something like that. And then clients might pay a premium to like forego risk and then make sure it's done right. And then there's also the factor of who recommended you. If somebody if we have relationships with really high caliber investors, let's say, and they're the ones being like, hey, you got to work with BX, you can't mess it up. Got to work with BX. That goes a long way. And the weight of
Yeah.
that recommendation can also help you, charge a lot more as well. So like pricing extends all the way to the way you position yourself, the marketing and all of that precedes even the direct convo with the client.
Got you. Got you. Yeah. That's interesting how you laid it out. It makes me second guess if we should take our pricing down from our website. I mean, it helps filter out a lot of people because we the reason why we actually put it up there is we used to get so much inbound of people who were just like not qualified. Like, okay, fine, we rank first for Webflow agency and Webflow related keywords, but it's a double edged sword because we used to get a lot of shit. Like people would come for like $2,000, $5,000 budget stuff, and like, sure, we can do it if we weren't this busy, maybe, or we can refer you to someone else. But it's come to the point now where we were thinking like, what's a good filter to filter people out? And then we had a whole debate at Veza about how we're going to do this, and we decided, you know what, let's put pricing on our website. I know it's a very gray area of should you put pricing, should you not put pricing, and we decided, you know what, let's just throw it up there and let's see what happens. And so far, it's been pretty good. Like people look at our pricing, and we see user journeys on like when someone converts, we see which pages they go on, and they're usually always going on the pricing page, spending time there, reading the add-ons, what's included, and then they go submit the form and they talk to us. So we were able to Yeah, hopefully it was a good move. I think it was a good move in terms of the quality of leads that we've been getting. So that's been reassuring. I'm curious now, like, so you have Barrow Holdings, you have the whole holdco model, which is something that we're aspiring to as well. We have several other agency ventures that we own and operate, that we're also expanding. And so, what's the vision for Barrel Holdco? You wanna it sounds like you're creating an agency accelerator where you're helping agencies accelerate from all those books you read behind you and all the deep thinking you've been doing on the walks to help them get ground in their agencies. And then, you obviously want them all to be successful, but what's the model behind Barrel? How are you building this thing?
Yeah, so for Barrel Holdings, the big long term vision, my co-founder Sewik and I talked about, basically part of that discussion was, look, we've worked together for 2 decades, side by side on building an agency business. Um, what's the next couple of decades going to look like, and how do we want to grow? How do we want to learn? How do we want to just get professional fulfillment as well as like achieve something that we think is worthwhile? And a lot of that was, well, the asset that we have ultimately after 2 decades of running an agency was how to run an agency business, and a lot of the mistakes, avoid a lot of the mistakes, and kind of some of the
Yeah.
things that we think could be distilled to help uh, whoever we work with, like kind of shortcut a lot of the hard paths that we took. And so with that in mind, we thought, okay, this holding company concept, obviously we've launched a lot of the agencies, from scratch and built it from the ground up. But we're also very much interested in bringing in agencies into the fold, and we're probably going to experience a spectrum of them. Some of them are going to be agencies that might be struggling, are underperforming, and maybe the founder wants to move on and kind of find a new steward for their agency. So that could be these turnaround situations. Others could be high performing businesses, but for some reason or another, maybe the founder wants to de-risk, or maybe the founder is feeling lonely and wants a partner to help them continue their uh, trajectory to a new level. And so we want to be a place for that as well. But you know I think as we engage more in these kind of M&A activities, we're gonna yeah we're gonna have our we're gonna really develop this lens and kind of perspective on, like, hey, who do we want to ultimately work with, what kind of businesses do we want to take on and continue to grow, and then how do we challenge ourselves and kind of go beyond maybe our comfort zone, which has primarily been like branding, design, web, right? And maybe there's more complex technologies that we might go into. Maybe we might go closer into the IT side of things, and like those are all avenues that might be open to us. And so yeah, pretty excited to pursue it. It's the whole point of all of this is to make it a joy to come to work every day, make it a joy to learn new things, and then meet really great people, build new relationships, and ultimately like create as many win-win situations, for us obviously, but also for a lot of these partners that we'll be taking on who are going to be running our agencies.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, you have a vision. You know where you want to take this thing. You have a lot of history, like you said. Your number one asset is what you know and what you've learned through the wins and the losses, and you're applying that across the board to all the different agencies. So I'm sure the CEOs you guys put in place too are getting a lot of value from that leadership and that insight. Um, with the holding model, is this something you guys are gonna stay within digital marketing, or do you see yourself expanding into different markets as well?
Yeah, I think probably expand. It's going to be services, right? Like we think that model of like, hey, we'll have clients, and we have people, and there's some kind of service that we're offering. Um, but I could see it evolve. Like I do think, for example, could we go deeper into something like CRM implementations, let's say, or something like that, or can we go deeper into like app building or stuff like that. So I think those are all on the table. And then we also might go really deep into brand strategy, or content production, things like that. So those are all on the table, and we'll we'll be looking and we'll be curious, and I think when the right opportunities come, we'll be willing to make that
Yeah.
decision.
Speaking of those opportunities, what do you look for in an opportunity? Like, what's your main metric?
Main metric,
Yeah.
I think we see so many different types of businesses, honestly, that like it's
Hmm.
hard to distill in that way. I mean, I think one of the things is like that we actually do kind of look for consistently is like, hey, like what is who are the clients, and what kind of experience have they had? Because I think
Hmm.
even if we're buying an agency that struggled, like one of the things that will compel us to want to at least look to buy it is if they've had if they have some like recognizable brands, or kind of some high potential clients on their roster that they've serviced well and have a good relationship with. I think that's valuable. Like, and other
Yeah.
parts of the business might be poorly run. Let's say they're not good with expense management, they're not good with utilization, etc. But like if they have done a good job of keeping clients and giving them a great product as well as service, like we that always intrigues us.
Very cool. Very cool. Peter, this was very insightful and great. I wrote a lot down from what you told me about the different challenges that Vez is currently going through with our extended sales cycles and stuff. So I'm definitely gonna do that. I'm gonna pull some data as well and try to model it for the future to see how we can still reach our 2024 goals despite what's happening and how many more leads we need in the pipeline to meet that. I'll let you know what those numbers are if you're curious.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. So it was a pleasure, Peter. Thank you for being on the Veza Talks podcast, and we'll chat again very soon.
All right. Thanks.